Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Tyler Rowland bought a quiet lakeside plot to escape the chaos of city life, he thought he found peace. But what began as a dream cabin retreat turned into a ruthless land war against an HOA queen willing to lie, forge, and fight to take what wasn't hers. I never thought the sound of wind rustling through pine trees could feel like a punch to the gut. But there I was, standing on a patch of dirt and broken roots at the edge of Dove Lake, wondering if I'd finally found the place that would quiet my brain for good. My name's Tyler Rowland. I'm 37 years old, a landscape architect out of Fort Collins. For the last 15 years, I've been designing Zen gardens for tech bros, rooftop terraces for condo developers, and natural patios for people who wouldn't know a native grass if it bit them on the ankle. It pays well, but it drains your soul drop by drop. I needed out. I didn't want to sell enlightenment anymore. I wanted to live it. So when I came across a listing for an old, overgrown lot on the north shore of Dove Lake, I didn't even blink. 3.5 acres, private deed. Clean title dating back to the 1960s. No HOA, no power lines, no sewer, just trees, water, and a dirt road that hadn't seen a grader since Reagan was in office. I closed on it within a week, had a topographic survey done, got my county permits filed, and moved in the basics. A prefab modular cabin on a gravel pad, a field kitchen under a canvas canopy, a couple solar panels, and a generator I kept behind the shed like it was contraband. It wasn't much, but it was mine. That first weekend, I invited 3 close friends to come out and break it in with me. Just guys I trusted. No loud music, no chaos, just grilled ribeyes, beers and koozies, and the kind of campfire silence you only get 30 miles past the last gas station. We set up camp maybe 15 feet from the water's edge, pulled up fold-out chairs, got a fire going in the stone ring I'd built that morning. The sky turned molten orange behind the ridge, and for a second, I genuinely thought, maybe I've finally done it. Maybe this is where I get to exhale. Then came the flashlight. A narrow beam sliced through the trees like a prison searchlight. At first, I figured maybe it was a hiker. Then I heard the voice. "You can't be here. This is restricted access. HOA property. You're trespassing." I turned around and saw her. Mid-50s, platinum hair pulled so tight it could ping a tuning fork, blazer over a fleece vest, and a clipboard clutched like she was expecting to cite someone. Behind her, 2 men with reflective vests that looked like they'd been ordered off Amazon in bulk. HOA wannabe stormtroopers. She marched into our firelight like she had legal jurisdiction over oxygen itself. "Evening," I said, keeping my tone calm. "Can I help you?" "I'm Karen Sterling," she announced, president of the Lakeside Commons Homeowners Association. "This land is under environmental protection zoning and governed by our community rules. Campfires are prohibited. Non-member activity is prohibited. You need to vacate immediately." I stayed seated. "Ma'am, I think you're mistaken. This parcel isn't part of Lakeside Commons. I bought this property last month." "Here." I reached over and grabbed the folder I'd brought out earlier to show my buddies. "Here's the deed, county registration, and the topo survey. This land has been outside HOA jurisdiction since before Lakeside Commons even existed." She didn't even look at the papers, just folded her arms tighter. "This area was included in the ecological buffer zone adopted by the HOA in our last board meeting. Lakeside Commons now regulates shoreline activity on all adjacent parcels. That includes yours. Temporary structures, open fires, and non-compliant occupancy are prohibited under Section 7.6. I blinked. "With respect, you don't regulate anything here. I'm not part of your HOA. This is private property. You're standing on it." "That's a legal boundary you crossed." Karen's face stiffened. One of the clipboard guys stepped forward and muttered something, and she snapped. "We'll see about that. I'm filing a violation report. And if you refuse to comply, I'll be calling the sheriff." "I encourage you to," I said, standing now. "They'll love looking at notarized purchase documents while you explain why you walked onto private land without consent." That got under her skin. Her jaw twitched, and for a half second, I thought she might throw the clipboard at me. Instead, she gave a curt nod to her 2 volunteers, spun around, and vanished into the trees. Flashlight beam bouncing like a warning shot. The fire still crackled behind me, but the mood had shifted. One of my friends whispered, "Was that real?" Oh yeah, it was real. And something told me this was just the prologue. The sun hadn't fully climbed over the ridge the next morning when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. At first, I figured it was one of my friends heading out early, but when I stepped outside, coffee mug in hand, I saw the unmistakable profile of a Larimer County Sheriff's cruiser nosing up my driveway. Great, she actually called them. 2 officers stepped out. One older, built like he'd been wearing the same duty belt since the 90s. The other younger, fresh-faced, and trying very hard to radiate authority. They scanned the property, then the older one nodded politely in my direction. "Morning. You Tyler Rowland?" "That's me," I said. "Can I help you, officers?" "We had a call last night," the younger one said, already checking his tablet. "Something about unauthorized camping, environmental violations, possibly illegal structures." Caller identified herself as Karen Sterling, president of Lakeside Commons HOA. I couldn't help but chuckle. Ah, so she wasn't bluffing. "Come on, let me show you something." I led them to my small outdoor table, where I'd laid out a binder with all the relevant documents. I had everything: the deed, the title search, the survey with GPS coordinates, the county's own map overlay showing the HOA boundaries stopping well short of my parcel. I even had the approved permit for the modular cabin and temporary infrastructure. The older officer flipped through the pages slowly, his brow rising a little more with each turn. The younger one leaned over his shoulder, frowning. "She said this land was part of their community zoning extension." "Yeah," I said, "except it isn't. This lot was platted and recorded in 1967. It predates Lakeside Commons by at least 4 decades. No annexation, no servitudes, no association membership. I did my homework, and if you want to check with the county clerk or the zoning board, they'll tell you the same." The older officer handed the folder back and gave a satisfied nod. "Looks solid to me. Mind if we take some pictures for the report?" "Go ahead," I said, stepping back. "Just stay on the gravel." I just seeded the slope behind the cabin. They walked around for about 10 minutes, taking photos, asking a few questions about water access and sewage. I had a composting toilet and a freshwater tank. When they were done, the younger officer looked almost sheepish. "Well, Mr. Rowland, everything seems in order. We'll file the report and mark this as resolved. Sorry for the inconvenience." "No worries," I said. "I get the feeling this isn't the last I'll see of her." The older officer gave me a look that said more than words could. "She's thorough," he said diplomatically, "but she doesn't have jurisdiction here. You're good." They climbed into their cruiser and rolled back down the drive, tires crunching over pine needles. I stood there for a while, sipping my now cold coffee, wondering how someone could spend so much time obsessing over land that wasn't theirs. Later that day, when my friends had all left and the silence returned, I took a walk down to the lakeshore. I'd built a small bench out of reclaimed cedar and set it up where the trees opened onto a view of the water. It was supposed to be my quiet spot, somewhere I could think, sketch, maybe drink a beer, and watch the light fade over the surface of the lake. But when I got there, the view was blocked. A new sign had appeared, a laminated sheet nailed to a cedar post planted right where the trail opened to the shore. It read, "Notice, this shoreline is managed under HOA environmental protocol. Use by non-members prohibited. Violators will be prosecuted." I stared at it for a good minute, debating whether to laugh or tear it down with my teeth. Instead, I pulled out my phone, snapped a picture, and walked back up to the cabin. That evening, I got to work. I drafted a formal complaint to the county, not just about the sign, but about the false call to law enforcement, the misrepresentation of jurisdiction, and potential trespassing. I attached photos, documents, maps, the whole package. I even highlighted the boundaries with bright red arrows like I was submitting a 5th grade science project. I sent it all to the zoning board, the recorder's office, and the sheriff's department. Then I made a copy for myself and poured a stiff drink. But I wasn't done. Not anymore. The next morning, I installed the first of 4 trail cameras I'd picked up on the way back into town, mounted one high in a pine tree overlooking the driveway, another near the path to the lake, the third facing the cabin's rear, and the last one disguised near the trail where I'd found the sign, because now I wasn't just protecting my peace. I was building a record. I went into town to restock supplies and returned just before dusk, boots dusty, radio on low, thinking about nothing more complicated than the plan for the week. Finish the bench by the inlet, trench the rainwater diversion, plant a row of willows. Along the wash, The truck bounced up the rutted drive, and I noticed it first with that sick, quiet little prick behind my ribs. A line. A dark, angular line cutting through the trees like someone had drawn a border across my morning. The fence ran in a crooked arc, posts sunk into the earth, wire stretched taut, and worst of all, it ran a good 15 meters inland of the bluff where I'd staked my property line. Staked, notarized, GPS marked. My survey map lived in that same binder in my glove box. Someone had decided to put a boundary where none existed. They'd even nailed a sign to one of the posts. I walked closer, the pine needles muffling my steps, and read the laminate in a practiced official tone. Lakeside Commons Environmental Protection Zone. Unauthorized access prohibited. Violators will be prosecuted. Whoever put it up had not even bothered to spell commons consistently. The C looked shaky like someone wrote it hurriedly with their left hand. I peeled it off with both hands and wadded it into my back pocket like evidence. My mouth tasted of sand. I cleared the fence in under an hour. Didn't make a scene. Just unbolted a couple of brackets, dragged posts free, and fed the wire into the back of the truck. It felt petty and enormous at once. Petty because fencing is physical labor anyone can do. Enormous because someone had crossed the line from bureaucratic annoyance to physical encroachment. After I took the pictures I needed, close-ups of post holes overlapping my survey markers, GPS coordinates logged, I called the county surveyor and booked a professional survey for first thing Monday. If nails and plywood were the language of intimidation, the surveyor's report would be legalese and steel. I wanted him to set the coordinates down cold and unarguable. That night, I slept with a hammer under the bed and a camera feed open on my phone. At dawn, I found the water feed to the field kitchen twisted like someone had walked a blade right through the hose. The generator had been pulled from its mount, but luckily not wrecked. Whoever came for a show of force wanted to spook me, not burn the place down. There was also a message hammered into the mud by the back door, a scrap of cardboard with blocky letters, weighted down with a flat stone. Join or leave, it read, the paint still tacky to the touch. Whoever wrote it wanted it to look like an ultimatum, the kind of thing you see in bad movies where someone is meant to fold under social pressure. I bagged the cardboard, filed the vandalism report, and made phone calls to my lawyer, who told me not to touch anything except to preserve evidence, and to the district inspector, who at least promised to send someone to look at the trenching and utility damage. Then I set up more cameras because this had stepped beyond dusty postcards and into targeted harassment. I have a practical streak. If someone wanted to play property games, they'd at least have to narrate their villainy on camera so the county could see it in the light. By noon, the feed pinged. Motion detected on camera 2, the one I'd coaxed into the crotch of an old fir overlooking the South Trail. A truck, white, a nondescript utility bed, rolled up. 2 figures in orange vests moved like they were performing a task, measuring, posting, taking photos. One of them planted another laminated sign in the exact spot where I'd removed the first. At first glance, it could have been another HOA stunt, except that the men carried clipboards and wore badges that read Lakeside Commons, Environmental Inspectors. In the video, one of them glanced up directly at the camera with a twitch in his cheek. The other turned and winked almost imperceptibly, the kind of exchange you make when you think you're invisible behind civic authority. I called them as soon as the truck cleared the drive. The voice on the other end was flat and practiced. "We're conducting shoreline compliance checks on behalf of Lakeside Commons," the man said. "We have permission to conduct temporary measures to enforce public safety." "You have my permission to point out the sun," I said, "but you do not have jurisdiction over my land. Your guys put the original fence up inside my boundary, and now you have them back doing your dirty work. Come on up, and we'll sort this like adults. Or I'll show you the county recorder's map." I didn't shout. Yelling makes you look reactionary. I kept my tone level, and my anger measured like a tool. The line went quiet for a beat, and then came the civilian sigh of someone telling you they'd file the report and be on their way. They left before I could get a carriage return from the county office. In the truck bed sat a length of ripped irrigation hose, the kind I always keep for patch jobs. They'd taken a piece of mine, a personal little theft to punctuate their point. That night, a neighbor I didn't know, a woman whose property edged mine 2 lots over, came down the trail with a thermos and an apology-shaped face. She told me she'd seen the white truck around after dark, that rumors had been swirling in Lakeside Commons about reclaiming the shore, and that some of the older residents were uneasy about the development creeping closer to the water. Some of them think the association is protecting the lake, she said. Others just want their view and their boat slips. I fed her coffee and told her what I'd done. The removed fence, the call to the surveyor, the cameras, the complaint. When she left, she tapped the back of my hand, the kind of human contact that was both an offering and a warning. Be smart, she said. Don't give them a reason to cross the line you can't explain away. I didn't sleep much after that. The cameras captured 2 late-night walks where somebody, maybe one of Karen's volunteers, maybe someone else entirely, had come and retaped the original sign, moving the post a few inches here and a few inches there, each time shifting. Documentation marginally in their favor. Small changes like moving pebbles under a survey stake. They also caught the 2 men in orange vests inspecting my property again, this time taking photos of my cabin siding as if cataloging potential violations. The files saved to a secure drive with timestamps and GPS tags. I labeled them and emailed copies to my lawyer and the county recorder. The pattern was clear. This wasn't about ecology or safety. It was an escalation tactic. Paint the boundary, move the boundary, normalize the encroachment, and rely on the fact that most landowners don't have the patience or the paperwork to fight back. I had both patience and paperwork. For now, that had to be enough. By the time the surveyor arrived, I had orange marker flags planted in every corner, red ribbons tied to boundary trees, and a folding table set up with coffee, topo maps, and 3 sets of gloves in case he brought help. He didn't. Just a single guy named Dennis with a beard like a snowstorm and a laser level that looked like it could call down drones. He shook my hand, looked around at the DIY war zone I was living in, and said, "Let me guess. Choe thinks this is theirs." I gave a dry laugh. That obvious? He just nodded and got to work. By mid-afternoon, we'd walked the perimeter, replotted every coordinate, and compared my deed and the 1967 subdivision plat with the county's official overlay. Nothing had changed. I was still within my right. Every inch of my land fell outside of the Lakeside Commons boundary. The fence they'd put up had been on my property by a good 49 feet at its worst. Dennis took photos, signed a statement, and agreed to file his own report with the county surveyor's office. That alone was worth the sweat. But I wasn't satisfied with just defending the ground. I wanted to know why this was happening. Not just Karen's personal vendetta, but the mechanism. How does a private citizen, even one hiding behind a clipboard and an overinflated title, get away with expanding HOA jurisdiction like it's monopoly? That's when I called Kendra. She's an old college friend of mine, now working in county records. We hadn't talked in years, but I shot her a message with the title, "Need Your Help. HOA Power Trip, Dove Lake." Within an hour, she called back laughing. "Oh, I've heard about that, Karen," she said. "You're the guy with the cabin?" She's been filing paperwork like it's Black Friday in the land use section. I explained everything. The fence, the false inspectors, the threats, the fake environmental signs. Kendra agreed to dig. A few days later, she called me from a burner number. "You're not going to like this," she said. She did file for a zoning amendment, quietly, claimed it was a lakeshore restoration initiative. Attached environmental impact statements, even included a survey. Fake, from what I can tell. Said the residents of adjacent parcels had signed off on it. I looked at the petition. Guess whose name is on it? I didn't say anything. Yours. And the guy you bought the land from. He died 3 years ago. Exactly. Karen had forged consent documents to get the county to approve a buffer zone expansion, one that included my parcel, under the premise of preserving the shoreline. She'd wrapped the whole thing in the language of eco-responsibility, aquatic biodiversity, sediment protection, erosion mitigation, a masterstroke of soft coercion. She'd taken my property and tried to convert it into a pawn in her HOA chessboard. "This isn't just overreach," Kendra added. "This is fraud. If you file a formal complaint, I'll testify." That night, I didn't sleep. I built a folder, a big one, labeled it Lakeside HOA, Encroachment Timeline. Inside it, I put the deed, surveyor's GPS stamped report, photos of the fence, screenshots of the signs, motion captured images of the inspectors, the cardboard threat, Kendra's documents. A highlighted copy of the fake petition with the dead man's signature. Then I called a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. I wanted someone with dirt under their fingernails, not a country club real estate guy. Through a local legal network, I found Aisha Martin, a property rights bulldog who used to work for the Colorado Land and Water Board. We met at a diner. I slid the folder across the table, watched her leaf through it while sipping black coffee like it was a deposition. Halfway through, she paused, tapped a page, and said, "This isn't just an HOA problem. This smells like conspiracy to defraud and misrepresentation of jurisdiction. If she filed this zoning petition under oath, we can open her up like a peach." I liked her already. By the following week, we had filed a formal complaint with the Colorado Division of Real Estate and a parallel complaint with the State Environmental Quality Office, both alleging forgery of signatures on a zoning petition, unauthorized, jurisdictional expansion by HOA, falsification of environmental compliance materials, encroachment, and trespass. Then we went public. Kendra connected me with a local reporter, Elena Vasquez, who worked for a small but sharp regional outlet that loved land rights stories. I gave her the folder. We spent 2 hours walking the edge of the bluff, talking about lakeshore ecosystems and fake committees and why someone would want to own all of a shoreline, not just a piece. The article dropped 3 days later. Private property, public lies. How one HOA tried to annex the lake. It blew up. Karen was quoted multiple times, stuff pulled straight from HOA newsletters and public meetings. She looked deranged in print. Lakeside Commons must set the example for environmental stewardship, she'd written. If that means regulating rogue developments, so be it. That same morning, my mailbox was stuffed with flyers. Anonymous, of course. "Roland is destroying our shoreline," they screamed. "Say no to unregulated lakefront abuse." One had a dead fish taped to it. Later that night, one of my cameras caught someone creeping along the edge of the trail with bolt cutters. They tried to snip a solar line. They didn't realize I'd installed a second camera behind the brush. They left fingerprints. The sheriff's office dusted the casing the next day. Karen wasn't just pushing policy anymore. She was pushing her luck. After the article dropped, everything shifted. The air got tighter. I started to notice unfamiliar cars parked near the trailhead, just idling. Neighbors I hadn't met yet gave me looks, some curious, others hostile. One guy even shouted something about freeloaders ruining the lake as he jogged by. Apparently, standing up for your own deeded land made you public enemy number one when the local HOA queen had painted you as a pollutant. Then came the letter. Not an email, not a note. A thick, professionally printed envelope from Lakeside Commons Legal Committee, sealed with some cheap gold foil logo like they were running a damn country club. The letter claimed I was in material breach of regional environmental codes and refusing to comply with communal ordinances, citing vague infractions like unauthorized open flame activity, visual disruption to community character, and unapproved shoreline lighting. The kicker? They demanded I cease all residency and commercial activity pending review by the HOA Violation Committee. I laughed out loud reading it. Then I sent it straight to Aisha. She didn't laugh. "They're baiting you," she said flatly. "Trying to get you to react, to fold or violate something in return. This is soft-core harassment dressed up like governance. And guess what? It's completely illegal. You're not even part of their jurisdiction. It's like McDonald's fining you for eating a Whopper." Still, I couldn't ignore it. We drafted a cease and desist letter citing Colorado revised statutes, property codes, and civil harassment clauses. Aisha sent it via certified mail and emailed it to the HOA board. No reply. Instead, they escalated. 2 nights later, I was out near the fire pit with my friend Daryl. He'd driven up from Fort Collins with a cooler full of beer and absolutely zero patience for HOA drama. Around 11 p.m., we heard tires on gravel, a slow crawl. Then headlights flooded the front of the cabin. Not one car, 2. Both black SUVs, no plates on the front. Out stepped a man and a woman, both in reflective vests labeled Lakeside Security, holding clipboards. "We're conducting a late hours compliance check," the woman announced, stepping right up to the edge of my patio. I didn't move. "On what authority?" "We're deputized by the Lakeside Commons HOA to monitor shoreline properties after reports of fire hazard activity." Daryl cracked a beer and said, "Lady, this is private land." "He doesn't answer to your dress-up club." The man glanced at a map on his clipboard. "This parcel is within proposed jurisdictional boundary phase 3. Proposed isn't the same as enforced," I said. "Unless you're with the sheriff's department, you're trespassing. Turn around." They didn't move. I held up my phone, turned on the camera, and panned across them. "Smile for the complaint file." That did it. The man huffed, muttered something about non-compliance, and they drove off, not back down the main road, but through the brush trail that curved behind the lot. I made a note to install more cameras. By the weekend, the retaliation got worse. I woke up Sunday morning to find someone had spray painted HOA or GTFO across the side of my tool shed. Another camera caught a figure in a hoodie near the generator trying to yank out the fuel line. I turned the footage over to the sheriff. He was polite but vague. "We're seeing a lot of tension up at Dove Lake lately," he said. "You sure you want to keep escalating this?" "I'm not the one escalating," I replied. "I'm defending what I own." He shrugged. "Just be careful. You're out here pretty isolated." Exactly. That's what Karen was counting on. She wanted to wear me down, make me regret ever putting a stake in this land. But I wasn't playing defense anymore. I'd tasted how deep her scheme went. The zoning fraud, the media spin, the faux officials. And I had no intention of backing off. I wasn't just a guy with a cabin now. I was a target with a file, a lawyer, and a press contact. So, I built higher walls. Not literally. I didn't want to live in a fortress. But I tripled my camera network, bought floodlights with motion sensors, and installed a backup generator inside a lockbox. I even got a second Wi-Fi backup router with a hidden SIM card in case someone tried to cut me offline. And then, quietly, I began mapping out my counterstrike. With Kendra's help, we pulled the full HOA budget filings and meeting notes, the ones Karen hadn't meant for public view. They showed just how far she was willing to bend the law. Tens of thousands spent on security consultations with zero receipts, line items labeled Community Defense Perimeter Expansion, even a proposal for installing private gates on unowned land, including access roads leading past my property. All of it signed by Karen. But the bombshell was a line marked Shoreline Redevelopment Phase 1, May 2025. It included sketches for a private boat dock, luxury picnic areas, and even a Lakeside Commons member-only clubhouse built partly across the line that cut through my land. They weren't just trying to pressure me into leaving. They were trying to build on my land. I stared at the plans in disbelief. They were stamped with the HOA's seal, dated just a week before Karen first stormed my camp. This wasn't personal, not at first. It was business. My cabin, my bluff, my chunk of Dove Lake, all of it was just in the way of her lakeside fantasy. That's why she wanted me gone. I forwarded everything to Aisha and to Elena, the journalist. Time to go nuclear. It was time to stop reacting and start dictating the terms. Karen had been throwing punches behind a veil of bureaucracy and manufactured authority, but she never expected someone to punch back with evidence, press, and precision. That's where I had the upper hand now. And I intended to use it. The next step was public pressure. Elena, the journalist, ran her piece in the Fort Collins Examiner. Headline: Fake Borders and Real Harassment, How One HOA is Seizing Land It Doesn't Own. The article was brutal. It laid out the timeline, exposed the zoning manipulations, detailed the unauthorized patrols, and even included the footage of the lakeside security agents creeping around my property. Karen's name appeared 17 times. And under the final quote, Elena had included a picture of me, arms crossed, standing by my cabin with Dove Lake glowing in the background. Within 24 hours, my inbox was flooded. Some emails were supportive, landowners thanking me for standing up. Others were hostile, calling me a troublemaker or accusing me of destroying community cohesion. One guy wrote, "I hope someone burns that cabin down." I printed that one and handed it to the sheriff's deputy, who now had a formal case file with my name on it. But the real ripple hit Karen. According to Aisha's contacts, 2 county commissioners received formal complaints from citizens questioning Lakeside Commons' legitimacy. The state's Office of Environmental Quality received an anonymous tip, wonder who sent it, about illegal shoreline development and HOA-led intimidation. And the Colorado Association of Homeowners Boards, an actual regulatory body, issued a formal request for HOA documentation relating to zoning expansions. I knew Karen would retaliate, but I didn't expect her to go full scorched earth that fast. That Thursday, I came back from a supply run to find my dock completely gone. Vanished. Just a patch of wet earth and a few broken boards on the shore. It hadn't been stolen. It had been demolished. Nearby, stakes were planted in the ground. Bright pink tape fluttering in the breeze, marked Phase 1 Survey Complete. At the center was a laminated sheet with the HOA logo and a notice, Proposed Development Zone, Future Lakeside Commons, Pavilion. No construction allowed without HOA approval. It was like watching someone build a Starbucks in your living room. I didn't scream. I didn't rage. I took out my drone, flew it over the area, captured every inch of it from multiple angles, then drove straight to the county zoning office with Aisha on the phone. We walked right in, bypassed the front desk, and went straight to a guy named Glenn, senior zoning analyst, silver ponytail, and one of Aisha's old college friends. When I showed him the drone photos and the laminated sheet, his eyes widened. They're already marking construction. That's insane. Dove Lake's shoreline is under a Class B protection status. That means no development within 20 feet of the high water line. And even beyond that, it needs multiple permits. No HOA has authority over that without a formal joint use agreement, and this one doesn't have it. So what happens now? I asked. Glenn leaned back, cracked his knuckles, and said, "Now we open a zoning audit. And if they forged anything, it's criminal." Aisha filed the motion that same afternoon, backed by Glenn's notarized assessment and our entire file of HOA communications, security footage, and vandalism reports. The audit gave us teeth. It froze any new construction, triggered a background check on HOA filings, and mandated a state land use inspection. Karen, meanwhile, doubled down. That weekend, she called a special community emergency meeting. I wasn't invited, obviously, but Kendra, my quiet spy in the HOA ranks, managed to record most of it. The video she sent me was gold. There she stood, in front of a room full of mostly confused, mostly older homeowners, delivering a speech with all the fake gravity of a cruise ship captain announcing a storm. "We are under siege," she said. A hostile actor is threatening the peace and visual harmony of Dove Lake. He refuses to engage with our community, refuses to follow shared values, and is actively coordinating with the press to discredit our mission. If we don't assert our authority now, we lose the future of our lakeside paradise. One guy in the crowd raised his hand and said, "But I thought his land wasn't part of the HOA." Karen's face twitched. "We are in the process of adjusting our maps," she snapped. "The land status is in flux." "Flux?" Another woman repeated. "That doesn't sound legal." The video cut off there, but not before catching a few murmurs. People were doubting her. Finally, the iron grip she had over the narrative was starting to slip. The more she pushed, the more cracks she exposed. But the best was still to come. Elena called me Sunday morning with a voice full of caffeine and victory. "Guess what we found?" she said. "Karen filed a shoreline management ordinance with the county and forged your signature to make it look like you consented to community water access." I nearly dropped my coffee. "She used your name to get a fake easement signed off," Elena continued. "Our editor verified it with the Land Records Department. The signature doesn't match your deed, and they flagged it when they compared handwriting." I forwarded it to Aisha. "This," she said, "is wire fraud, forgery, and misrepresentation of property rights to a government entity. She's toast." I didn't know whether to laugh or scream. All I knew was that the quiet cabin by the lake had become ground zero for a legal explosion, and the shockwave was heading straight for Queen Karen's throne. By the time Monday rolled around, things were unraveling fast for Karen. The zoning audit had kicked in. The county suspended all Lakeside Commons expansion efforts pending investigation. The laminated development zone signs vanished overnight, like they'd never been there. But I had the drone footage, the GPS logs, and Glenn's sworn statement. We were beyond the he said, she said phase now. Karen didn't go quiet. Instead, she went louder. I heard from neighbors that she was calling my cabin a rogue structure in community forums, insisting I was a squatter disrupting the harmonized lakeside lifestyle. She even printed flyers accusing me of environmental damage. One showed a fake photo of my generator leaking into the lake. It was laughably edited, but not everyone knew that. Then came the county inspectors. 2 officials arrived in a dusty sedan, clipboard in hand, ready to verify my compliance. I showed them my permits, my ecological report, the topographic survey, and the footage of Karen's fence, patrols, and dock sabotage. They nodded, took notes, and said they'd also be visiting the HOA office. They didn't find an office. Instead, they found Karen working out of a lakefront guest house with HOA files stuffed in plastic bins and half-burnt permit requests in her fire pit. No joke. Elena had followed up and caught it all in a photo. Karen scrambling to shove documents into a bag while the inspectors watched, stunned. That photo made it into the next article. HOA fraud, Dove Lake's queen in hot water. The headline didn't pull punches, and neither did the law. Aisha filed a formal complaint citing fraud, forgery, and environmental violations. The DA's office opened a case. That night, I sat by my campfire again, the same spot where it all started, beer in hand. The stars reflected off Dove Lake like nothing had happened, but I knew the storm wasn't over. It was just circling, ready to crash down on Karen. It all came crashing down at the Lakeside Commons Emergency Board meeting. Karen called it to reassert community control, but by the time I showed up, yes, I went. Out of pure curiosity, the parking lot was already buzzing with murmurs. Aisha was there with her legal pad. Elena had her press badge swinging on her chest, and 2 county deputies stood near the entrance, arms crossed, saying nothing, but watching everything. Karen stormed into the rec hall with a folder and her signature stiff smile, trying to act like she still held the crown. She went straight to the front, tapped the microphone, and began her speech. "We must remain united," she said. "This disruption caused by an outsider has damaged the integrity of our shoreline and invited scrutiny where none is needed. She didn't get to finish. A man in a gray suit walked calmly down the aisle, flanked by both deputies. He was from the district attorney's office, and he was holding a warrant. "Karen Sterling," he said, "you are under arrest for fraud, forgery of public documents, misappropriation of HOA funds, and illegal seizure of private property. Please come with us." Gasps, murmurs. One woman actually clutched her pearls. Karen stammered something about a mistake, then turned to run, only to be met by one of the deputies already blocking the door. She was handcuffed in front of the board, in front of her followers, in front of me. The irony! She screamed, "This is my community," as they walked her out. A week later, the HOA voted to dissolve. My claim for damages went through without resistance. The insurance fund of Lakeside Commons, what was left of it, was redirected to cover my legal fees, property repairs, and a generous chunk of emotional distress damages. I finished the cabin. It's no longer a weekend getaway, it's home now. I added a dock, a real one this time, and built a little public bench on the shoreline with a handmade sign above it. Private lake access, not for HOA members. Ask Karen why and when the summer wind moves through the trees and across Dove Lake. Sometimes I think I can still hear her yelling.